you all for joining us for the second day at Sync.
Yes.
So who wants to go first? No, I'm kidding. It's my icebreaker. Dr. Rumman, we'll start with you. You've spent many years developing solutions advocating for ethical, explainable, and transparent AI. How far are we from that reality of a functional international AI governance board today, would you say?
Yeah, that's a heavy hitter start. No softballs from you, I guess, huh? No?
We start strong here.
That's great. I actually flew in from Seoul, South Korea this morning, and it was the second Global AI Summit. The first one was at Bletchley Park, started by the UK AI Safety Institute. And there are a couple of things actually I find really fascinating. Well, the world of AI moves very quickly. And now we have AI Safety Institutes set up all over the world, the United States, Japan, the UK, France is setting one up, et cetera. So it was a meeting of a lot of the very analogous people all over the world, as well as CEOs, CTOs of all the major tech companies. So we are still a bit away. A couple of things I'll point out is it's actually very new territory globally to try to think about how we navigate this. So it's not easy. And it's sometimes a bit of an uneasy alliance between corporations, government, and then civil society people and academics like myself. So I think it will never be over. It's always a process of negotiation, but I'm optimistic about what I saw.
Thank you for that. As we just heard from Kevin Kelly, optimism really is everything for us. Mr. Sinan, you in 2022 you wrote a book, The Hype Machine, which is an expert-level dive into how social media affects our decision-making and shapes our worldwide views in ways that are both useful and dangerous. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that hot take?
Sure. Thank you for having me. I do think that it is important to be optimistic, and it's also important to be realistic, in the sense that there are always, with any technology throughout human history, pros and cons, risk and potential opportunities. So when it comes to the role of social media and now automated machine learning, applied machine learning, and/or AI mixed with social media, you have the potential for opportunities, for example, and we will hear probably from Mohammed a little bit about this later on, to encourage people to take behaviors that improve their lives, their healths, and the safety and security of everyone around them. We saw this during the pandemic in the ability to communicate with populations very quickly at great scale, to encourage them to take vaccines or to follow stay-at-home orders to reduce the impact of the pandemic worldwide. At the same time, there are tremendous risks when it comes to, for instance, manipulation of democracy. So the role of fake news and misinformation and disinformation in affecting how people vote and participate in democracy and potentially skew democratic and other types of governmental outcomes or societal outcomes against the will of the people, if you will.
And that's something that is in the headlines these days. And one of my questions, since you went there, so obviously 24, an election year, is there worry or any apprehension about that taking place?
Yes, I mean, I think we have to be vigilant. There are, I think, over 1 billion people voting this year in elections around the world. And since about 2015, I think the world has woken up to the possibility of tremendous manipulation in an automated way over social media systems. The research shows that the real risk is in affecting turnout in elections, not so much vote choice, in the sense that people are generally not going to be changed to vote for the opposite candidate in an election through social media messaging. But they can be dramatically motivated to either stay home or go vote by messaging on social media. And so it is a potential to have disruptive effects in democratic elections around the world. Since 2016, we have seen two things that make it more worrying. One is that manipulators are more aware of the potential of this type of technology to generate disruption. And two is that the process can be scaled and automated more quickly today than in the past. You can have a small team of a few people coordinate a very sophisticated manipulation at scale.
Mohammed, bringing things back home, you are involved with nudge units. This is a relatively new concept in Saudi Arabia, which applies to principles of behavioral science to designing and implementing strategies that influence people's actions in desired ways. The global introduction to nudge units has led to a backlash from citizens who feel they are being explicitly manipulated into behaviors they don't wish to undertake for reasons which they don't agree with. Is that criticism justified?
Assalamu alaikum, sabah al-khair jami'an. Gosh, feels good to play at the home stadium. So
Home court advantage.
Yes. So I'm not here to defend Kastenstein or Taylor or anybody in nudging, and I would just like to say behavioral science is much more than just nudges. Nudge is just one tool of behavioral science. But I think instead of getting stuck in the standoff between the proponents and opponents of is nudge good or bad, I think it has to be evaluated based on case by case and effectiveness. Framing information in a certain way is totally different than opt-in or opt-out option. So I don't want to be overgeneralizing thing, but if we go back to the definition of what's called nudges now, which lacks a lot of theory, by the way, it's basically how you design the environment to influence behavior in a predictable way without forbidding other options or changing the economic incentive so much. If I pay you to do something, that's not behavioral science, or that's not nudges at least. So I get this concern, the manipulation, because we have bad history in a lot of other societies about behavioral science. But there are certain principles, if you adhere to, you could practice ethical behavioral science, one of which, of course, is autonomy. If you sustain autonomy, keep autonomy, so that people could use whatever they want to use. However, you nudge them. What we know, at least in the public sector, where we really watch out for people welfare and well-being, without forbidding any external options, that's a nice sweet spot where you could make a positive difference without jeopardizing people's autonomy. Also, I don't want to get too long on this, but you have to be transparent. If you conduct any behavioral science, being transparent does not jeopardize the effectiveness of your intervention. Actually, people like it if they know what they're doing, if they know that what they're doing and what you're recommending them to do is in their good and welfare, they actually like it. And third principle, you have to align as a researcher, as a policymaker, you have to align your interests to the end user's interest. So we see this, a good example in the car insurance company here in Saudi, حتى abroad, the Vitality program, for example. The more health behaviors you do in your daily life, the safer you drive, you get more points, and you save the economy a lot of other direct and indirect costs. Here, the interests of the end user and the policymaker align very well. Everybody's happy. It's a win-win.
So is that where you see one of the most useful applications or benefits as far as technological developments are concerned? Okay, you mentioned car insurance, which is a very interesting one.
Right.
I mean, when I'm more stressed, I think I'm not as safe on the roads as when I'm more de-stressed. But are there any other areas where you feel like it could be beneficial?
Yeah, by show of hand here, how many of you have Apple Watch or any wearable? Rings, anything with data. So I see this is the largest potential. The wearables are really getting ahead of the game with the bunch of data we're getting to personalize any exercises, sometimes now getting with the sleep quality, and I'm sure you know well about this. So I see big potential for wearables. Also, there is an advance now in video games dealing with some developmental disorders, such as autism, such as ADHD. There are some novel games over there that help in promoting some behaviors for people with special needs.
Yeah, I wear a sleep tracker, and
You do,
I'm
yeah.
obsessed with it. You know. Dr. Rumman, maybe a little easier question than the opening one. You work regularly on a strategy known as red teaming,
Yes.
which is a very interesting one, where independent programmers and hackers are given a free rein to push the company's technological boundaries, I'm guessing firewalls as well, so that you can see who can get through our system so we know what kind of safeguards we need to protect. Does this strategy work? If so, how does it work?
Yes, and thank you. So that's what my nonprofit, Humane Intelligence, focuses on. I've expanded the notion of red teaming. It traditionally was used in the military. It's used in cybersecurity. And usually the definition of a hacker was somebody who's familiar with the technical aspects of breaking into a system. So I've actually expanded the notion. If we think about ways in which artificial intelligence can be harmful, we have the potential for economic disruption. We were just talking about democratic disruption, embedding in biases, cultural stereotypes. So the hackers that I work with are people who are, sometimes people have a different cultural background, have a different native language that they speak, and it works. We conducted the largest ever generative AI red teaming challenge. 8 different large language model companies. This was sponsored by the US White House, Office of Science, Technology, and Policy. And we had 2,200 people come in and look at 21 different questions designed around the United States AI Bill of Rights, which articulates things like the right to privacy, to be free from surveillance, things like that. And it's interesting because what we are able to learn by getting a wide range of cultural perspectives, backgrounds, et cetera, are the meta-level patterns of behavior that we see, not just of the models themselves, but also in how people interact with those models.
And I would assume that over time, you'd have to conduct frequent hacking sessions, because as tech advances, so does your need to see who can penetrate through the system and who doesn't.
That's exactly right. And these systems are increasingly sophisticated. Malicious use hackers are also, they're constantly working on new and novel methods, but also, general purpose AI systems are not clearly defined for a specific task. So if we think about the area that you will have to analyze and understand and stress test, it's massive. We're not talking about an AI system that's designed to identify a disease from X-rays. That's fairly narrowly scoped. We know what good is, we know what bad is. When we talk about a general purpose AI model, what is the goal of a chatbot? There isn't really a goal, right, of any large language model, GPT 4.0 or whatever. It doesn't have a specific goal. So if we want to identify all the ways in which it can go wrong and it can break, it's a near infinite space of problems. So I've done these exercises also with scientists to look at the potential for scientific mis and disinformation. I've done them with architects to look at intellectual property and the future of creativity. And every time it's very empowering to people who are in fields that will be impacted by AI, but who don't build AI, to be part of the AI testing process.
Mohammed, do we have anything like that in Saudi?
Of the I think, yeah, there's a lot of, I think Sadaya does a lot of this, similar aspects where they do some campaigns, they do hackathon to
Is that what hackathons are? Because I know we have
It's
that.
part of it. It's similar to it, yeah. And there is some prizes and there's some incentives if you actually find some weaknesses in the system here and there, yeah.
I read a stat, and it's official information, the amount of times per day that, in Saudi we have one app for everything governmental usage. How many times per day Abshir tries to get hacked into?
Wow.
So you can imagine, what kind of safeguards go into that.
Absolutely.
To combat hackers on a platform like Abshir, which is
Absolutely.
our main app for everything governmental. Sinan, you've conducted research on the influence of social networks on everything from voting behavior to the spread of disease. What are some unexpected surprises in your findings that you have come across? We have a lot of time, by the way.
Yeah, I feel like there's surprises every day. I'll give you one from a few years ago that's still surprising to me and still surprising to a lot of people, and then one from just hot off the press of some research that we're doing now, which I think is also very important. So we wrote this paper back in 2018 about the spread of false news and how false news spreads faster than the truth. And when we first saw these results, we took all of Twitter's data from its inception to 2017, so about 10 years of data. And we worked at the highest levels of Twitter, so we had access to the entire historical archive, not the garden hose or the Deca hose, but the entire data set, minus the tweets that people had deleted over time. We analyzed this data and found that false news traveled farther, faster, deeper, and more broadly than the truth in every category of information, and that false political news was the most viral. This was surprising to us at the time because the results were so strong. And these results were actually potentially quite surprising to other people as well, in the sense that one of the results from that paper was that debunking, so the idea that false news spreads and then the truth tries to inoculate it or debunk it, and it never spreads as fast or fast enough to cover the falsehood. And there was this really interesting thing that happened because a science reporter, a new paper came out by my colleague Johan Ugander at Stanford, and the science reporter read the paper and incorrectly interpreted it to mean that our results had been overturned, wrote an article about it, and then this went viral, that, oh, remember that really famous paper on the cover of Science in 2018, that false news, that was actually false, and oh, isn't that amazing? And so that spread like wildfire, and then they went and interviewed Johan, and he said, no, actually, our paper replicates the results from 2018 and supports Sinan's research, and then Science retracted the article the next day, and that news didn't spread anywhere near as fast. The Atlantic wrote an article that was about how the result had been overturned. Then they wrote another article that said, I'm sorry, I lied about fake news. None of that spread as fast. And ironically, it just proved the original paper, that the debunking never spreads as quickly. So there was many different surprises in that episode. Most recently, we've been focused on the level of and the concept of trust between humans and AI. When do humans trust AI? When should humans trust AI? Because frequently, we need to get that exact concept right. When AI hallucinates, we need to not trust it. When AI gives us information that's true, valid, and can improve our lives, we need to trust it. Also, there are human-in-the-loop feedback mechanisms that improve AI. This is part of the learning process of AI, and that process only works well if trust between humans and AI is developed appropriately. Not always trusting, not always being skeptical, or always being skeptical, but not always not trusting. And so we've been doing some research that's also surprising. Then I'll give you this one result, which is that generally, people tend to not trust AI-based information or generative information. However, their trust of AI is dramatically improved when AI provides references for its reasoning, or why it's reasoning, I'll say, the content that it's producing. If it is referenced, humans trust it significantly more. And here's the surprising part, that trust is not eroded at all if the references are completely hallucinated, which is very scary in the sense that the veneer of false rigor is just as trust-inducing as rigor itself, which is potentially very dangerous.
Very interesting. So if you want an article of yours to go viral, just have someone say it's fake. That's right. Benefit from that way. I'm going to use that in my line of work. Mohammed. One of your more recent projects looked at the association between social media use in Saudi Arabia, which we know is very high per capita, and the development of body dysmorphic disorder and the attitudes towards cosmetic surgeries. How does the behavioral studies like this help inform and shape our evolving relationship with tech?
So a couple of weeks ago, the Commission of Telecom here in Saudi, they released the Internet in Saudi Arabia report. Was pretty scary. There's a lot of surprising facts there. Saudis spend more than 7 hours. 53% of males spend more than 7 hours of the waking day on the internet. Among females, it's 54% spending on the internet. And when you see the app they're using, number 1 is WhatsApp, number 2 is TikTok, number 3 is Snapchat. Wow. So 7 hours in these platforms can tell you how much we are influenced and impacted by social media and the internet. So we wanted to look into what is this doing to body image, because one of the big issues now in mental health is, of course, we have all the baskets of depression and anxiety, but also we have body image and we have concerns about being liked and fear of missing out and all these phenomena. So we looked at the this body dysmorphic disorder, and this disorder actually is just in a nutshell is when you obsess so much about how your body look like, even though in the normal distribution your body is normal in that way, meaning you don't have any justified concern to obsess over your body, and it gets into being a mental health disorder. So we looked into that, and we try also look to how much consumption of social media, and if there is any correlation. Of course, we cannot establish any causality there. And sure enough, the more you spend on video-based apps, specifically Snapchat and Instagram, these are the ones that we tested, the more you consume of these apps, the more likely you are to report higher in the body dysmorphic scale, the more, let's say, the stronger attitude you have toward accepting cosmetic surgery and cosmetic interventions. So studies such as this one, back to your question, what it does, first of all, I hope it alerts people. I hope that it gives an aha moment, change some attitudes and perception. But we know in behavioral science, changing attitudes and perception is not really enough. So, but this is one goal these studies do. It gives people some self-awareness. Number 2, it does help with campaign, with public health campaign. Coming from a public health perspective, you need your campaign to be evidence-based. You need to speak to your target audience, obviously. So now we do have the evidence, or at least some shred of evidence, that we could design our public health campaign on. So number 3 also, as a policymaker, now we live in an era where we should have evidence-based public policy. So we could inform policymakers about this sphere, these consequences. Also, one of the recommendations in the paper is that can we really screen people at the cosmetic clinics and all these clinics that offer these? I know it's lucrative business. I know there's a lot of conflict of interest, but is the authority, the health authority, can they implement, can they enforce any sort of screening before really accepting these waves of people into cosmetic surgery? And having this study and other studies, of course, could give you some support and some rationale behind what you request and ask for.
Sinan, I wanted to touch on, my first experience with TikTok was a year ago. The first video I watched the app noticed that I was spending over 10 seconds on a video related to a car. I like cars. And then for the rest of the day and the next week and month, all I saw was cars. And I was like, 1 second, Instagram doesn't do this. Algorithms and the way they manipulate us, get in our heads, it's almost like they know us better than we know ourselves. What can we do to ourselves to protect autonomy, to just basically take control over our digital lives?
Well, I mean, I think it's worth highlighting for a moment the attention economy, because I think that that is one of the most fundamental drivers of the situation that we're in today. The fact that we have an economic model, you mentioned the number of hours people spend, that is by design. And the reason it's by design is because the economic incentives are such that companies profit by the amount of time that we spend on these apps. So because there's an advertising model, because it's an attention economy where these platforms essentially earn revenue by directing your attention to people who want to give you information, whether it's public service announcements or advertisements that are paid for, that is the way that this economy, the social media economy, runs. Because it is like that, I think that our antidote, in a sense, is our own attention. So paying attention to our attention, if you will. So I meditate in the mornings, and this is something that helps sort of center me during a day, especially a day like today, when I've gotten not so much sleep and I've been traveling and so on. It sort of focuses me a little bit. There are many other ways that we can take control of our attention, in a sense. The reason the apps do what you just described is because that is their most immediate model of capturing and retaining your attention by focusing on the things that you are saying through your swipes and clicks you're most interested in that moment. So they will, the lowest hanging fruit is to give you more of what you say you want most recently with just slight bits of diversity in order to search the space of other things that you might be interested in. If we take frequent breaks, if we are intentional about our use of these types of media so that we're not just mindlessly scrolling, but intentionally searching or consuming information that we are seeking for a purpose, in addition to doing things that center our attention in our lives, like proper diet, sleep, exercise, meditation, I think all of those are personal paths to getting more control of our attention.
I once tried meditating using an app, and the notifications were distracting me. I haven't meditated since. So we might have to sit off stage, and I want you to teach me how you meditate. I don't think it's on an app.
I'm no guru, so I don't think that's the right way.
Dr. Rumman, could you talk to us about the concept of moral outsourcing?
Yes.
Does the idea of people having the right to repair AI, which was a focus of a recent TED Talk of yours, does that serve as an encounter to the problems posed by moral outsourcing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first, I just want to define this term, and it was a behavior that I noticed in Silicon Valley, and I gave a TEDx talk about this around 2017, where we use language that anthropomorphizes AI, and we've never had a technology before where we treat it like it is a sentient being, it is making independent decisions. And I'll give you an example. We'll see headlines like AI will replace teachers, AI will replace lawyers. And there's a lot of, to harken back to the keynote, a lot of fearful dystopian narratives. Now, if we look at the construct of that sentence, AI will replace teachers, there is no human being here except for the human being impacted, these teachers. But that's far from the truth. Artificial intelligence does not crawl out of a computer and decide, I want to be a teacher today. It has no free will. Somebody has to make a company, design an algorithm, go implement that algorithm, raise funding, get customers, and then they will make things that mimic what teachers do. So in that language, what happens, first of all, number one, is people are completely disempowered. So a lot of the negative sentiment about artificial intelligence, and just to quote numbers that we're seeing all around the world, for the first time, actually continuing in a trend, last November, a Pew Research poll of Americans showed that 53% of Americans are more concerned than they are excited about artificial intelligence. In the Middle East and North Africa, it was about 50-50. And the specific question was something like, will AI cause the people of your nation more harm than good? Why do people feel this way? Well, when you see a sentence like AI will replace you and your profession. There is nothing inclusive or inspiring about your role in an AI future. The other part of that narrative is that the programmers who build these systems are now absolved of any negative externality. If something goes wrong, then, oh, well, the AI did it. Even though I programmed it, I chose the data, I did the implementation, I created the app or the system, but the AI did it. So my TED Talk from a few months ago in Vancouver is about this idea of the right to repair. And what's interesting is, generative AI, because of the accessibility, really the revolution of ChatGPT, et cetera, for those of us who are in the AI space, it was surprising to see how many people suddenly caught on to a technology that actually had already existed, right? It's GPT 3.5 and 4. There was a 1, there was a 2, right? Why that one? Well, because the design of it looked like a text messaging app, right? So if people in this country are spending 7 hours a day on WhatsApp, well, you look at ChatGPT and you're like, oh, I understand this. I can interact with it. I just type the way I would type to regular people. So the right to repair tries to bring in human agency and ownership of their own experience. The example I gave in my TED Talk was how smart tractors were introduced to farmers. And previously, farmers would just repair their own equipment. Farmers tend to be very self-sufficient people. Well, with the introduction of smart tractors, the user agreement said that you would violate your warranty if you fixed your own equipment. So farmers would have to pay a representative to come, and it could take weeks, and they just can't afford to do that. What they ended up doing was learn to program, and they hacked into their tractors. So it's a very inspiring story because it's from 2017. It's not happened yesterday. But what we're seeing today is as people interact with AI systems, they're actually saying, hey, I actually want a little bit more control or agency over how I'm interacting with the system, how it impacts my life. So there are individuals who work on the right to repair, this idea of being a third-party ethical hacker or third-party group that's not representing a company interest or somebody else. They're actually representing the public interest. So the right to repair could be a good foil to the idea of moral outsourcing because it brings people back into the story.
Mohammed, do you see AI, bringing things back home again, do you see AI having an effect so far in your line of work in terms of taking jobs or replacing the human? Have you seen anything like that yet?
I wouldn't say replacing a human, but we do have one of the largest virtual clinics or telemedicine centers in the world. I think we have the largest virtual hospital in Saudi Arabia, where there's a lot of AI being used in the operation room, especially for surgeries happening in remote areas and rural areas of Saudi Arabia, where consultants are in limited pool. So there's a lot of use of technology there, but it's not really replacing any physician there. It's just helping the staff who is in Najran or who is in Al-Jawf, مثلا, helping those people with more specialized staff based in Riyadh using medicine and using telemedicine and all sort of communication devices. Also, one of the uses that where we use AI now in Saudi is to use existing data, the wealth of data that we have right now, to predict where the hot zones are for chronic diseases in the future. So based on a lot of your hospital visits, your visit to public institutes, there's a lot of data scattered here and there. So where this model does is that it gathers all of these, puts some zip code or geographical location to where you are, and then based on that, we could create a heat map where obesity is rising, for example. And it also defines which demographic group is most susceptible to diabetes, for example, or for strokes. So this way, it gives us information from the future to help us allocate enough resources based on location, basically.
And what about you, Sinan? Have you seen AI something to become of prominence in the last few years in your line of work?
I mean, I think it depends on how you define AI. I think it's important not to get up on any particular model because this is going to be an evolution, and we're very, very early stages of this sort of AI revolution, if you will. I mean, neural networks have been around for decades. And large language models and diffusion models are sort of the darling of the day, but I think we're already seeing a lot of indication that they will not necessarily be the platform for prediction into the future. So I think the important thing is to understand applications of AI and its relationship to human beings and human decision making. That's where I think the most interesting and the most relevant focus should be. Technology evolves, technology gets better over time. How we use technology is the key question, and how we integrate technology into our lives is the key question. That's why I appreciate the notion of behavioral science being front and center in this panel, and I know, having spoken to my colleagues in the back before coming out here, that they are both also very focused on the human side of AI, and I think that that is where we're going to make the most meaningful difference in terms of AI's impact in human society, for better or for worse, is in how we incorporate it, how we apply it, how we prepare to use it, how we, as Dr. Chowdhury was saying, take responsibility for it, preserve our rights, for instance, to use it in certain ways. These are really social questions. They're behavioral questions, and I think foregrounding those questions is going to be very important.
So the robots aren't taking over anytime soon?
I wouldn't think so, no.
Thank goodness. Because I asked Mo Gauda the question yesterday. He didn't confirm or deny. Any closing words, Dr. Chowdhury, before we wrap up? We have 3 minutes to go.
Oh, sorry.
Any closing remarks?
Oh, goodness.
Anything you wanna end with before we
But
wrap up?
why do I always get the hard questions?
I'm so sorry because
No, I'm kidding. I think if there's one theme you're hearing echoed on this panel, is there is the need here, and what I think all of us navigate, is how these advanced technological systems, which are simply tools, can be incorporated into our existing institutional structures, social structures, governmental structures, to help drive a more positive future. But that requires a lot of thought, deliberation, thinking through positive and negative externalities and use cases. It's a very long journey ahead.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, Mohammed.
All right, so we have different circles of influence as people. You have your own circle to influence. You use intentional use and consumption of social media and the internet. Be really intentional on how you consume these things. Also, the outer circle is the influence you have in your kids and the new generation. I think we're being too loose and lax about how we allow these devices and consumption of the digital world inside our houses. We could influence the circle. Maybe I cannot influence anything in the Silicon Valley or with Facebook or with Instagram, but we do have a say in how we raise our kids and how they interact with technology. So let's focus on these two circles.
Crucial, very, very crucial. Thank you so much, Mohammed, Dr. Chowdhury, and Sinan. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for them. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.